On a winter night in New York, the wind cut like knives, snow blanketed the sidewalks, and the empty street was lit only by flickering lamps. At a lonely bus stop, Wick, a 46-year-old single-dad janitor, huddled inside a worn, tattered coat. Against his chest, he clutched a folder filled with 5 resumes, all of them rejected. Each breath came out as a cloud of white, reminding him of the cold seeping through his shoes with holes in the soles. Wick had once been a man with a family, a steady job, a home. But tragedy had taken his wife, his house, and even custody of his son. Now, all he had left was a fragile hope and the memory of his little boy. Through the curtain of snow, a figure appeared. Sophia, a woman in her early 30s, dressed in a thin office skirt, her bare hands trembling, wet hair clinging to her face. Wick noticed she had no coat, her small frame shuddering under the icy wind. He hesitated. That old coat was the only thing shielding him from the bitter cold. But as he saw Sophia shaking, his eyes softened. In that moment, caught between hunger, despair, and compassion, Wick made a choice few in his situation would dare. He gave her his only coat. The freezing wind sliced through the deserted street, but for Wick, the true cold didn't come from the snow. It came from the emptiness inside his chest. After placing the coat on Sophia, a stranger at the bus stop, he sat silently as her figure disappeared into the night on a departing bus. His body shivered violently without the coat, yet strangely, his heart carried a quiet warmth, the warmth of giving, the warmth of a kindness he thought life's hardships had already stripped away. Wick trudged back to his rusted old truck parked behind a warehouse. It wasn't just broken-down transportation. It had been his only home for years. Inside, nothing had changed. A few ragged blankets, a worn pillow, and a small tin box he always kept in the glove compartment. He opened it slowly. Inside lay a faded photograph of his late wife, Lily, smiling brightly, with their 7-year-old son, Noah, clinging to her. Those smiles now existed only in memory and on yellowed paper. The memories crashed over him like waves. Wick hadn't always been just a janitor. He had once been strong, steady, a man with a full family life. He worked night shifts so Lily could teach during the day, and every evening they shared dinner together, listening to Noah's carefree laughter. They weren't rich, but their little home was always warm. Wick often said, "We don't have much money, but we have enough love." And Lily would nod, her eyes glowing with warmth. Then tragedy struck. Cancer suddenly took Lily in just a few short months. Wick quit everything to care for his wife, draining himself both physically and financially. After the funeral, he held Noah tightly and promised, "I won't let you be alone." But life wouldn't let him keep that promise so easily. Bills piled up, odd jobs barely covered food, and one by one the house, then the rented apartment, slipped away. Soon, Wick and Noah were living in their old pickup truck. Even in poverty, Wick tried to turn everything into a game for his son. The back seat became a spaceship. A heated can of soup became an astronaut's meal, and the parking lot turned into their outer space playground. Noah laughed freely, believing it was just a temporary adventure. For Wick, every laugh was the only strength keeping him standing. But the harsh world didn't spare them. One day, a social worker knocked on the truck door. They said Noah needed a more stable environment, that a truck wasn't a place for a child to grow up. Wick knew they were right, but his heart shattered as he signed the papers. Before leaving, he hugged Noah tightly and whispered, "I'll come back for you. This is only temporary." With tears in his eyes, Noah nodded and handed his father a crayon drawing. 2 stick figures holding hands under a crooked sun, with the shaky words beneath, "I love you, Daddy, Noah." From that day on, the drawing became Wick's most precious treasure. He kept it in his coat pocket, clinging to the fragile hope that one day he would keep his promise. That very night, as Sophia wrapped herself in Wick's old coat, she had no idea the drawing was still inside. Wick never told her, silently hoping she wouldn't find it. To him, it was the last fragile thread connecting him to his son. Curled up in his truck, Wick closed his eyes, but memories refused to let him sleep. He remembered standing in long job fair lines, the cold stares when employers saw the empty resume. What did you used to do? Janitor, odd jobs, anything I could find, followed by the inevitable shake of the head. He remembered a question from a shelter worker. Why do you still get your hair cut every week? You've got nothing left to keep up appearances for. Wick had only smiled and answered, because my son needs to believe things can get better. And for him to believe it, I have to look like I believe it too. In the biting cold, Wick suddenly thought of Sophia, the woman now wearing his coat. In that brief moment, her eyes had shown surprise, then softened into gratitude. That image reminded him of Lily, the same trembling eyes in the cold, the same gentle squeeze of a hand in weakness, yet carrying faith in human kindness. Perhaps that was what had pushed him to give away his only coat. Not because he had more to spare, but because he needed to prove to himself that he could still give, still do good, even when he had nothing left. Outside, snow kept falling, piling against the windshield. Wick pulled a torn blanket around himself. His stomach growled with hunger, his hands shook from the cold. Yet in his heart came an unusual feeling, a quiet relief after doing the right thing. He whispered into the darkness, maybe tomorrow will be different. Maybe. Meanwhile, in her luxurious high-rise apartment, Sophia sat quietly on the sofa, still wrapped in Wick's old coat. When her hand slipped into its pocket, she touched a folded piece of paper. Pulling it out, she froze. It was Noah's crayon drawing, messy lines, yet holding a world of love. Her eyes blurred with tears. She realized the man who had given her warmth tonight was not just a poor janitor. He was a father who had lost everything, yet still carried a kind heart. And for Sophia, that discovery awakened something inside her that had long been asleep. The next morning, winter sunlight streamed across the glass towers of Manhattan. But inside the 40th floor office of Infinity Group, the air was heavy and silent. Sophia Langston, the powerful billionaire CEO, sat motionless at her walnut desk. In front of her was not a financial report or billion-dollar contract as usual, but a wrinkled sheet of paper covered in a child's shaky drawing. Two stick figures held hands beneath a crooked sun, with uneven words beneath. I love you, Daddy, Noah. Sophia's fingers traced the crayon lines, her chest tightening. She had long forgotten this feeling. The feeling of being moved by something so small, so simple. Last night, in the freezing dark at a bus stop, a poor man had given her everything he had left, his only coat. And now, this piece of paper told her more, that he wasn't just a struggling janitor. He was a father, still carrying his child's love like a treasure close to his heart. Memories of childhood stirred inside Sophia. She had once been a little girl in an orphanage, often forced to sleep on the steps of a church in the cutting cold. One night, a stranger had draped a warm coat over her shoulders and said only one thing: "You'll be okay." That small act changed her, planting a seed of hope in a desperate child's heart. Now, more than 20 years later, Sophia had received a coat from another stranger. Her heart trembled. Perhaps this was no coincidence. She pressed the bell for her assistant. The door opened, and Rachel, a cautious woman, stepped in. What do you need, Ms. Langston? Sophia lifted her gaze, her voice calm but resolute. Rachel, I want you to find someone. I don't know his full name, only that his name is Wick. He was at the bus stop on 56th and Madison last night around 8:30. He gave me this coat. Rachel hesitated, surprised. A billionaire CEO mobilizing her team to track down a nameless man? But seeing Sophia's unwavering eyes, she asked no questions and simply nodded. I'll do my best. Over the next few days, Sophia's assistants and the Infinity Group security team quietly gathered information. They pulled traffic camera footage from nearby intersections, cross-referenced bus schedules, and studied every blurred figure caught on tape. Gradually, a name emerged: Wick Miles. Once employed in janitorial services, later laid off, with no permanent address. A rusted pickup in the Bronx was confirmed as the place he returned to night after night. Rachel brought the thin folder back to Sophia's desk. This is everything we found. No criminal record, no scandals, just absence. A life faded into silence. Sophia took the folder and sat in silence for a long time. Every page, every detail about Wick tightened her chest. He had once been a devoted father, but had lost everything to cruel twists of fate. Finally, she rose to her feet, her eyes burning with determination. "Get the car ready. I want to meet him." The sleek black sedan pulled away from Manhattan's glittering financial district, heading toward the worn-down streets of the Bronx. Sophia sat in the back seat, clutching Noah's drawing tightly in her hands. Her heart raced, not with the stress of business, but with the nervous anticipation of a young woman about to see someone she could not forget. When the car stopped in front of an old warehouse, Sophia immediately spotted the rusted pickup truck, its roof covered in snow. The sight caught in her throat. This was the home of the man who had given her his coat. She stepped out, her high heels sinking into the snow. The truck door creaked open. Wick emerged, staring in shock at Sophia. His eyes flickered with confusion, then tightened into caution. "Sophia? What are you doing here?" She gave a small, uncertain smile. "I came to find you." Wick frowned, folding his arms as if to shield his unease. "Find me? I'm just an unemployed janitor. You don't need to waste your time. A thank you card would have been more than enough." Sophia shook her head. "No, Wick. I didn't come to thank you. I came because your act reminded me of something important. That real kindness doesn't need fame or money. Last night, you showed me something my world of business had long forgotten." Wick let out a bitter laugh. "Kindness doesn't pay rent. I only did what anyone should have done." Sophia stepped closer, her eyes unwavering. "No, Wick. Most people would have turned away. But you chose to give, even when you had nothing left. To me, that's a lesson worth more than any lecture in a boardroom." He fell silent. The cold seeped through his thin shirt, making him tremble, but Sophia's gaze held him in place. She sighed softly, then held out a folder. "I want to invite you to Infinity Group. I've created a new position, one that's never existed before. Advisor for Humanity and Values. I want you to sit in our meetings, share your real experiences, remind us that behind every number are real people." Wick looked down at the folder, then back up, his tired eyes filled with disbelief. "You're crazy. I'm just a janitor without a job. I don't have a degree, no management skills. I don't belong in your world." Sophia took one more step, her voice firm. "You don't need a degree to teach people how to care. You live it every day, and that's something no university can teach." For a long moment, silence hung heavy between them. Two worlds, one broken man and one billionaire CEO, stood face to face in the gray snow. Wick wanted to refuse, wanted to walk away. But in Sophia's eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Trust. He swallowed hard, turning his face away. I need time." Sophia nodded, not pressing him. Before stepping back into the car, she gently placed her hand on his arm. "Wick, you once gave away your only coat. Now give yourself one more chance." The black car drove off, leaving Wick standing alone in the snow. In his hands, the folder weighed heavy as stone. He looked up at the sky, the icy wind lashing against his worn face. Inside, a new battle had begun, between the fear of failure and the fragile spark of hope Sophia had ignited. That night, in his old truck, Wick opened the folder. The formal words, the red seal of Infinity Group, the official invitation. It all felt unreal. His heart pounded. He whispered, as if speaking to himself, as if speaking to his faraway son. "Maybe it's time to try again." The first day at Infinity Group, Wick stood frozen in the grand lobby, his heart racing. Gleaming glass walls, crystal chandeliers, employees in sharp suits and polished shoes, all of it made him feel like he didn't belong. His shirt was neatly pressed, his scuffed shoes cleaned as best as possible, but the marks of hardship could not be hidden. He kept his head low, clutching the folder Sophia had given him. Then Sophia stepped out of the elevator. Her gentle smile eased some of his tension. She led him into a large boardroom where the company's executives sat waiting. Instantly, skeptical eyes fixed on him. An unemployed janitor. Why was he here? Some frowned, others smirked quietly. Wick saw it all, and his chest tightened. Sophia's voice broke the silence, strong and steady. "This is Wick Miles. From today, he will be our advisor for humanity. He doesn't have a Harvard degree. He doesn't hold an MBA. But he has something we all need. Real experience, a real heart, and the perspective of a man who lost everything but still chose kindness." The room fell silent. Wick stood slowly, cleared his throat. "I'm not good at speeches. I don't know fancy words. All I have is my story. I lost my home, my job, and worst of all, custody of my son. I slept in an old truck for years. But even in that cold, I learned one thing. When you have nothing left, the only thing you can still give is kindness." He paused, meeting their eyes. "I didn't come here to teach anyone. I just want to remind you, every decision we make, every policy we write, affects real people. Fathers, mothers, children. Not just numbers on a report." The atmosphere shifted. Though cautious, many eyes were no longer cold. In the weeks that followed, Wick began sitting in on smaller meetings. At first, he remained quiet, just listening. But gradually, whenever someone proposed policies that placed too much pressure on employees, Wick spoke up. "If you set KPIs like that, do you know how late people will have to work? Are you sure they'll still have the energy to go home and play with their kids?" His questions cut through polished corporate language like a blade. People shifted uncomfortably, then fell into thoughtful silence. In the cafeteria, Wick sat with new hires, chatting about rushed dinners of instant noodles. In the break room, he listened to a young woman confess she wanted to quit because of stress. Wick only smiled gently and said, "You're not broken. You're just tired. Everyone has limits. Resting isn't weakness." That line spread through the company like wildfire. People copied it onto sticky notes, pinned it to bulletin boards, even printed it on coffee mugs. Sophia watched it all quietly. She saw how the atmosphere of Infinity Group began to shift. Conversations became more genuine, laughter returned to the hallways, and productivity didn't fall, it rose. Because when people felt heard, they worked with trust, not fear. It was in his own life. With Sophia's help and Infinity Group's support, he was able to rent a small apartment in Brooklyn. The day he moved in, he stood at the white-painted wooden door, his hand trembling as he turned the key. The place had just one living room and one bedroom, but to him, it was a castle. On a small wooden table, he placed Noah's drawing, the one once crumpled in his coat pocket, framed with honor. When Noah finally came home to live with his father, the little apartment filled with laughter. Their dinner was nothing fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread. But to them, it was a feast. Noah looked at his father, eyes shining. "Dad, you kept your promise. You came back for me." Wick couldn't answer. His throat closed up. Only his tear-filled eyes and the tight grip of his hand around his son said what words could not. Wick's relationship with Sophia also began to change. At first, they met only for work, but coffee breaks soon turned into long conversations. Sophia found in Wick something she had lost: simplicity and sincerity. Wick, in turn, saw in Sophia not just a powerful CEO, but a woman who had known loneliness and had learned to value kindness. One evening at sunset, they stood together on the rooftop, watching the sun sink behind the skyline. Sophia spoke softly. "You haven't just changed this company, Wick. You've changed me." Wick smiled faintly, his eyes distant. "No, I only reminded people of what they already knew." As time passed, Wick's presence became a living symbol at Infinity Group. Employees began calling him the keeper of the company's heart. His workshops were always full, not because he taught skills, but because he made people feel that they mattered. Then one day, a young man came to his small office, his voice trembling. "Mr. Wick, last month I was ready to give up everything. I thought my life was over. But then I heard you say, 'People don't need to be fixed, they just need to be heard.' That sentence kept me here. If it weren't for you, I don't think I'd still be alive." Wick fell silent, placing a hand on the young man's shoulder, his voice choked. "I'm glad you're still here." When the young man left, Wick remained in his chair, his eyes blurred with tears. He had once believed he was useless, that he no longer mattered. But now he understood. Sometimes a single word, a moment of listening, could save a life. Inside him, a fire he thought long extinguished began to burn again. For the first time in years, Wick felt truly useful, truly needed, and most importantly, he could finally hold his head high in front of his son and proudly say, "I'm still a good man, Noah." A year later, Infinity Group held a special day called One Kindness Day. The grand hall no longer displayed sales banners, but was instead decorated with white drapes, warm golden lights, and at the center stood Wick's old coat, framed with honor. Beneath it, a bronze plaque was engraved with the words, "One small act of kindness can change an entire life."